The door creaked slightly as she pushed it open. The dim light of the room spilled into the hallway, and her heart stopped for a moment as her eyes adjusted to the scene inside. There they were, her husband and her sister entangled on the bed, their faces inches apart, their whispers swallowed by the weight of betrayal in the air. For a second, she froze, her mind refusing to process what her eyes were witnessing. Her sister's laughter broke the silence, soft and intimate, like it had no place outside of that room. Her husband's hand lingered on her sister's arm, the way it used to on hers, and the betrayal hit her like a physical blow. "What the hell is going on here?" she demanded, her voice sharp enough to cut through their stolen moment. "My husband was sleeping on top of my sister. Both were naked. My sister's hair was open. My husband's hands were on her bolus. They jumped apart, scrambling to entangle themselves from the bedspread." Her husband's face turned pale, guilt written across every inch of his expression. Her sister, however, seemed to recover quicker, her eyes darting around as if searching for an excuse, a lie, a way out. "This isn't what it looks like," her husband stammered, his voice shaking. She let out a bitter laugh, her hands trembling as she gripped the edge of the doorframe. "Not what it looks like? Then by all means, explain why my husband and my sister are so close in my bedroom." Her sister opened her mouth, but no words came out. The silence between the three of them was suffocating, broken only by the faint hum of the ceiling fan overhead. Her husband stepped toward her, reaching out as though he could smooth over the shattered trust between them. "Listen, it was a mistake," he said quickly. "We didn't mean for this to happen." She took a step back, her voice rising. "A mistake? A mistake is forgetting an anniversary, not sneaking around with my sister behind my back." Tears pricked her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She turned to her sister, whose head was bowed, her face a mix of shame and defiance. "And you," she spat, "you're my sister. How could you? You're supposed to protect me, not stab me in the back." Her sister finally looked up, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to go this far." Go this far. She felt a surge of rage coursing through her veins. "So this wasn't a one-time thing, was it? How long has this been going on?" "Weeks, months." Neither of them answered, their silence speaking volumes. She laughed bitterly, shaking her head. "Unbelievable. You to disgust me." She turned on her heel, slamming the door behind her as she stormed down the hallway. Her heart was pounding, her chest tight with a mixture of anger and heartbreak. She didn't know where she was going or what she was going to do next. But one thing was clear, her life, her marriage, and her family would never be the same again. The silence in the hallway seemed endless. Her hands were trembling as she pressed them against the cold wall, trying to steady herself. She could still hear their muffled voices behind the door, but she couldn't make out the words. The room felt distant now, like it belonged to a different world, a world where trust was broken, and love was nothing but a hollow word. Her heart felt like it was being squeezed, and with every breath, a deep ache settled within her chest. She had been married to him for 5 years. 5 years of shared dreams, quiet mornings, laughter, and promises. But now, standing in the hallway, it all seemed like a lie, a beautiful facade that had crumbled in an instant. Her sister, the woman she had grown up with, the one who knew all her secrets, all her fears. How could she? Her thoughts were a whirlwind, but one thing kept clawing at her mind. She needed to know. She needed to hear it from them, to understand why this had happened, to face the truth no matter how painful. With a final deep breath, she turned back toward the bedroom and opened the door once more. Her husband was sitting on the edge of the bed now, his hands resting on his knees, his face a mixture of guilt and regret. Her sister had moved to the far corner of the room, eyes cast downward, avoiding her gaze. It was as though they were both waiting for her to speak, but no words seemed to come. She took a slow, deliberate step forward, her heart pounding in her ears. "Explain it to me," she demanded, her voice steadier than she felt. "Tell me why. Why my sister?" Her husband stood up, his eyes pleading. "I never wanted this to happen. You have to understand, it was a moment of weakness. We were both confused, and we made a terrible mistake." He ran a hand through his hair, clearly struggling with the weight of his own words. "I love you. I swear to God, I do." Her sister, still in the corner, finally spoke, her voice small and hesitant. "I never meant for it to go this far. It just happened." I didn't plan this, and I regret it every day. Her eyes flicked up to meet her sister's, but there was no hint of the playful sibling bond they had once shared. Instead, there was something far more complicated, something that felt like guilt, longing, and desperation. You regret it. She laughed, but it was bitter, devoid of warmth. You regret it, and yet you're standing here like nothing happened. Like this is just another misunderstanding. I'm sorry, her sister whispered, her voice trembling. I was weak too. I was lonely, and I didn't think things through. I never wanted to hurt you. It's just complicated. Her words hung in the air, but they weren't enough. Nothing could be enough. The trust she had given both of them had been shattered, and now, standing in the ruins, she had to decide what came next. Was there even a way back from this? Could she forgive them? Could she forgive herself for not seeing the signs earlier? Before she could speak, her husband took a step forward, his eyes searching hers. Please, don't leave. We can work through this. I made a mistake, but I love you, and I don't want to lose you. A wave of emotion washed over her, threatening to break the dam she had built around her heart. But she refused to let it. She was angry, she was hurt, but most of all, she was confused. She needed to think, to clear her head. I can't look at either of you right now, she said softly, her voice cracking. I need space. I need time. Her husband opened his mouth to protest, but she held up a hand, silencing him. I don't want to hear it. Not now. Without another word, she turned and walked out of the room, closing the door behind her with a firm click. The hallway felt cold and empty, the walls closing in as she moved down the stairs, each step echoing in the silence of the house. She needed to get out, away from everything, away from the betrayal that hung like a shadow over her home. The front door creaked open, and she stepped outside into the cool night air. She didn't know where she was going, only that she couldn't stay there, trapped in the house that had once felt like a sanctuary. The streets were quiet, the stars above distant and indifferent, and she walked aimlessly, trying to calm the whirlwind inside her. She didn't stop until she found herself at the small park by the edge of town. The swings creaked gently in the breeze, and she sat on one, pushing off the ground with her feet, the motion soothing as she tried to clear her mind. The night was still, and for a moment, it felt like she was the only person in the world. She could still feel the weight of her husband's touch on her skin, the way he used to hold her in his arms, making promises of forever. But now, forever seemed like a cruel joke. She closed her eyes, trying to steady her breathing. She needed to think, but her thoughts were a jumble of emotions, guilt, and anger. Could she ever forgive him? Could she forgive her sister? And more importantly, could she forgive herself for letting it go on for so long without seeing the cracks in their marriage?